folks, welcome to the Workshop Recorder. My name is Scott. I'm going to share with you a new project I've taken on. I'm usually an aircraft modeler, military scale models. Don't know why, they're interesting to me and I love the history. But I'm going into a new area with this Hasegawa Volkswagen delivery van. This is a 1967 model delivery van that I picked up quite a while ago. And I've always had this idea to recreate what I saw on a video by a modeler. Model Master is his blog, and I forget his name. But he did a knockout job. I'll link you to the videos. And I've always been inspired by his work and tried to plan out what I was going to do for my own project. And I'm basically shamelessly copying his methods or his procedures, at least to some degree. And they say that copying somebody is flattery, and so I hope he takes it like that. I really hope he does, because I'm basically taking the same steps he used, but I'm going to add some differences in mine and skip some of the things he did. But I'm going to build this thing out as a real junker. When I was a kid, these things were everywhere. These Volkswagen buses and vans, they were all over the place. I grew up in southeast Houston, close to the coast and close to fishing areas and in the burbs, close to NASA. And these things were all over, and they're usually associated, at least back when I was a kid, they were associated with hippies. They were associated with workers who were kind of blue-collar workers, like electricians and plumbers and things like that. But not of the highest grade, but kind of the, we need a van, we're going to buy a cheap used van, so you'd buy a Volkswagen. They were also associated with guys who like to tinker with engines and work on cars and stuff. And so you saw them in a numerous state of disrepair or customization, and they were everywhere. And the sound, that air-cooled engine of that Volkswagen engine is just such an iconic sound. So I thought I'd go ahead and build one, and so that's what I've done. So I want to show you what I've done in this part one and walk you through some of the things that I've implemented here to improve this kit. So what I've done, I took the, let me take these off here. I took the underbody, the chassis, and basically primed it in black, and then went over it with oils to give it a under the car look. If you've ever crawled around under a car, you know that they get rusty, but they get dirty, but generally they get washed a lot because you're traveling on the roads when it rains. And so I thought that was a sufficient oil wash effect on the bottom there. After all, no one's going to really see the bottom of this, but you got to do something with it. The engine and the suspensions here were painted with MRP colors and washed also with oil paints. Now, I did not lower the suspension, which some guys do when they're building these. I probably should have, but now that it's already painted, I'm not going to worry about it. I didn't lower the suspension like the guy I'm really copying. He did a good job at lowering his suspension. It would be a simple matter of cutting these parts up and just simply repositioning things. But now that they're painted, I'm not real excited to do that. These wheels are those sorry, terrible rubber wheels they always give you in these car kits. I hate these rubber wheels. I don't think you can work with them. And besides, I want one of my wheels to be flat. I want a flat tire. So I'm going to actually cast resin copies of these wheels. That's the plan, at least. We'll see how it goes. And that way I can work with them and sand them and paint them and deal with them the way I want to deal with them, rather than these rubber things, which never quite look right to me. Next thing I did was the bumpers, the chrome parts that come in the kit have that awful chrome finish that all car kits seem to want to give you, and you can't really work with that for what I want. So I soaked these in a product called Purple Power. It's a degreaser. It's a caustic degreaser. You can use any number of different ways to take the chrome off of scale model parts. Just look online, there's plenty of them. I also sanded the license plate mount off on here. Since it's not accurate, the bumpers, I want it to be a smooth piece, and I'll put the license plate on there. I'll build my own license plate, and we're going to put it on there with wires. As for the body, this is where all the initial work goes. what I've done is I took my Dremel motor tool, and if the light hits it just right, you can see there's a big dent there, like somebody jumped up on there to get a better look at something and dented the top in. There's dents over here, there's dents along the side. I gouged these dents in with a motor tool and then went over with different grades of sandpaper to smooth them all out. How these dents got there on top? Well, a work van gets dents in the oddest places. You know, maybe a telephone pole or something, or I'm thinking of making this a bait shop van. Maybe a boom from the shrimp boat at the dock. You know, clipped this van. Put a little some dents here and there. Now there's a mold seam line. Let me grab my little pointer tool. Let me grab whatever is handy. There's a mold seam line that runs right down here where the mold where the molds met, and there's one on this side too. Those need to be removed. They're very deceptive. They might even look like parts that are supposed to be there, but take those off. I put a lot of dents in the actual van and the sides of the van, and I put a couple of dents, very subtle, but they'll show up under weathering. You can see as the glare hits right in here, there's a dent right there. I took the Volkswagen logo off. I'm going to either leave it off completely or replace it with a photo etch Volkswagen logo. I may have to make that myself. There's a dent right in this area, and there's a lot of dents along this side, and I'm still working on this side. I'll talk about this rust in a moment, but I also opened up the gas can area, and I made a gas well there, a well behind the gas can, and of course the pipe, the filler cap will be right there in that little indentation. And what I'll do is I'm going to leave the cap off and leave the door off and stuff a rag in there like any respectable junk van might have. Now about this rust here, what I did is I went on the inside, and you can see, I hope you can see along the inside, I took my Dremel tool with a sanding drum, and I thinned along here. You got to be very careful not to go too thin. You'll lose some structural integrity. But I thinned along in here, and then I took my Mr. Paint scribing tool. You can use a needle or whatever. It's a very sharp hardened steel pin. And I went in here and I poked at it until I had opened up some holes. And I poked at it from both sides. And so I did this here where water would collect in the bodywork, here where water and rainwater would collect in the door, the base of the door. And I did that on both sides. And you can see that it gives a nice effect. Then I went over with Mr. Surfacer 500, which is a good filler putty primer, and it's the thicker of them, and I stippled some of that around here to give the impression, once it's painted over and weathered, of that bubbly, flaky rust you get when a car sits out and gathers water. And so I hope that'll give a good impression, a good effect. I really enjoy this kind of destructive modeling. Now I also I took the hinges off the door. There were hinges here. There were hinges here and here. And you can see that I've had some scratches in my efforts to take these hinges off that I've had to go and refill, and I'm currently sanding those. I also put a big line of, a big string of sprue goo, melted plastic. As I was filling the backside here, I lifted my brush up and a big string laid on there. So that left a mark I have to sand out, and also it left actually an impression, so that'll be filled and sanded. Let me show you what I've done on the interior. I'm not sure how far I'm going to take the interior because I'm not going to pose anything in the open position. But this is the seat. I don't know if you can see it because it's primed black, but the seat in the kit was awful. This is the seat kit that I've modified. So the way I did it was I took my files. Let's see if I can find some of my file. I took some of these, there I go throwing things. I took some of these, this is the one I used actually. I took some of these files that are V-shaped and contoured. It's flat on one side, it's curved on the other, and it comes to a point, and it has a very sharp edge on each side. And I used this to open up the grooves that were there in the kit part and to contour them in a round, kind of rounded way. I also took my Dremel tool and put some depressions where the passengers and driver might have sat for ages and ages, depressed those springs in that seat. And I took the back off of the bench because it was molded as one piece like that. And I couldn't get down into this area, the seam where the back meets the bench, and give it a realistic join there. You know, that's the place where French fries and pocket change and cigarette packs and all that stuff collects down in there and falls to the back behind the seat. It didn't look right from the kit, and so I separated them and I curved each surface there, and when I put it together I'll have a respectable seat. It'll at least be better than the kit seat. It's not perfect. But after I did all that work on those grooves, I went over it with my solvent glue. This is Tamiya extra thin in a bottle, but it's actually not Tamiya extra thin. I refilled the bottle with Grip number 4, I think that's what I use. But you could use any solvent glue. And then what I did, after that, that smooths it out and gives it a nice surface finish. After that, I took some stretch sprue and I put the piping along the edge so that you can see. I followed the contours, piping along the edge there and piping along the edge here. That gives the seat a much better look. Just that little bit of work, that was, you know, one session of work, improves the seat greatly. You can see these very fine brass hinges that I made out of the tube. I'm showing you this after the fact, if I can catch one of these, but they just lay along in the groove like that if there was a hinge there, and you can see that they give a pretty convincing effect. They actually have a hole on the top, so you could actually hinge these doors if you wanted to. But yeah, they look better that way. I also used the kit part for the door hinge here, because this door hinge, that's a brass tube. This is the kit part, because it stands proud a little bit, because on this door hinge the rear view mirror also nestles into that little hinge hole right there. So I took the mirror off and I drilled out these holes on either side, and I'll go and put in a brass rod arm there for the rear view mirrors. Now I had mentioned that earlier, but I wanted to show it to you once it was installed, and this has been primed already. Looks a lot better primed. But I want to show you what I've done now on the interior. These are the interior panels. The kit doesn't have anything of an interior. And if you study a Volkswagen van, you can see that the headlight wells bulge out into the van. They're actually little domes in there. The floor comes about right here. These actually bulge into the area where the driver sits. And all this structure is really only covered up by these vinyl or cloth, and custom guys do, customizers will do different kinds of panels, and they snap in. They literally have snaps on them, and they snap in. This one goes on the front here. I haven't finished making this one yet, but you fit it in there, and then these are the door panels, and these will fit in. Let's see, which side do I have? These will fit in right on the door there. Kind of hard to see. And they follow the contour of the door, and you'll have to measure carefully. I used a piece of paper, stuck it in there, and drew templates on there roughly, and just worked it till I had one right, and used that to make my door panels. And so I'll go and I'll paint the interior the color of the vehicle, the original factory color, and then I'll come back in with these, probably a dark vinyl gray, because these would look like rubber floor mats in the delivery van version. So that's where we stand right now. I'm also gonna improve the dashboard. There's a bit of a little tray that goes under. I don't know what better to call it. It's like a pipe with a tray in it that goes underneath the dashboard where you can toss all your junk. And so we'll work on that. And that's about all I'm going to do on the interior, I think. This is, as all my projects do, this kind of stuff wasn't planned until I started looking in this model and thought, man, that's bad. All that's in there is the tooling marks from the mold making process, and you can see where they filled in some of the old tool to fill in windows, and it just doesn't look right. You just can't leave it bare like that. And so I had to make these to go in there. But yeah, that's a pretty fun project. I enjoy this kind of stuff, and it's going to be a fun time rusting this and weathering it and painting it and all kinds of crazy techniques with hairspray and salt chipping and oil weathering, and we'll see what we get. So thanks for joining me. Part 2 will be coming when there's a sufficient body of work to share. Take care. Bye-bye.
As a child of the 70s, I'm all but forgotten, and I just wanna get through this. They say